of the disease. So as I said, that currently we are limited to 50 persons in the funerals. So we know that traditionally we would also visit the family that has the bereavement even during the week before the funeral. So now those are limited because of social distancing that we have to observe. And also the issue of, especially if a person has passed on due to COVID-19, we have seen that sometimes the body is not supposed to be viewed, and some of the beliefs is that if a person has passed, the family has to view the body. And even before you view the body, the family is supposed to go to the mortuary and wash the person and dress and clean up the body and that. So that now with COVID-19 challenges or pandemic is prohibited. So the closing of the grave, for example, now we have to use TBLs to close the grave, of which it might be contrary to some beliefs of or religious belief or cultures of some people, and that government may take over the burial of remains if death exceeds 10 to 20 per day per town, and that we have seen it is happening in other countries. It has not yet happened with us, but in other countries we saw it happening. So we thought that let us open this platform so that we can look at all these challenges, starting from the challenges of the bereaved, the challenges of the forms of burial themselves, vis-a-vis our beliefs as a society and our culture as a society, and come with a way forward to say, then if we are faced with this situation, or maybe if we can have particular eventualities, how are we going to balance this, to balance what we need, that needs to happen, to balance the issue of the spaces. I have indicated that before the COVID-19, because nobody anticipated the situation that we find ourselves in today. So before the COVID-19, already the big metros had already starting to talk about the challenges of land, the challenges of the crematoria that are not sufficient. And so now with COVID-19, it means the challenges are going to be even worse. So what is it that we can suggest as leaders? So I'm going to leave it there for now and allow leaders to give some input on this. And thank you very much. Dr. Fundi, do you want to add? Would you want to make an addition, Dr. Fundile?
No, I think what I would like to say is that this is very good that leadership that is representative of the different faiths in South Africa are actually represented in this virtual meeting, because as we all know, part of leadership is that when you see a risk, any risk, whether it's in business or in an organization, from time to time, one has to do what is referred to as scenario planning. You plan for the best case scenario, but also you plan for the worst case scenario. Planning for the worst case scenario does not necessarily mean that you think that is going to happen. However, you do so that should that happen, you are not caught napping. Other people, they talk about the memory of the future. So by planning ahead for the worst case scenario, you will deal better with that scenario in the unlikely event that it takes place. So as we are looking at the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa, we are all hoping that the human toll from this pandemic doesn't get to be like what we see in Italy or in America or in other places. But we should still plan to say, in the event that something like that does happen, how would we deal with it as the citizens of Johannesburg. So I am basically saying this is a necessary but difficult discussion, but it is important to, have people to be prepared in their minds that something like this can happen. And if it does happen, what will happen? So that's all I needed to say at this point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyati. Would you want to add before we can give to the leadership to give an input? Okay, Sipho is not here. Okay, are you here?
No, Madam Speaker, I think mine is just to appreciate the conversation. And as Doc has already said, that it is important that we discuss the worst case scenarios and to be as realistic as possible, and to equally so get the guidance from all the spiritual leaders that are joining us in this conversation. So now with those few words, I think let's leave it to you, Madam Speaker, to invite our leaders to then inform us about how they envisage the rollout in terms of the worst case scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now like to invite leaders to give us an input, and maybe in your input, just talk about how in your congregation or in your space, the beliefs that are around your space, and then what does it mean with this pandemic, and how do we balance the culture shift with the challenges that are brought by the pandemic? I would really invite, and please, if you want to speak, just unmute yourself, Dr. Nyati.
Madam Speaker, we've got Joy Peter, who is representing Magaza. So we didn't welcome her. Can we just quickly do that? And then we then allow the various leaders to, go ahead and speak.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyati, for alerting me. Joy Peter, you are most welcome. Please introduce yourself, ma'am, and the role that you are playing in your space.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Doc. My name is Joy Peter, and I'm here representing a professor, or Dr. Magaza. I'm a traditional healer, and I also work as the spokesperson for the Minister of Defense. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Joy. You are most welcome. I hope you have heard the purpose of the debate and what is expected from us as leaders of the society. Thank you very much. Okay.
There's a hand up from the person who's using Jacqueline's phone.
Okay. Is that Tatu Manene?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Let me just greet the listeners and also people that are there in this platform. Let me just start by saying to you, our speaker, we appreciate the effort that we are making so that we enlighten our society and also be enlightened by other sectors of this world. But regarding the issue of this pandemic, nobody was aware that we'll face this pandemic. So it's like all of us now, we are in the war or we are in the jungle. So in the jungle, there will be casualties. So that's where we'll face these challenges. And then we all try to find a solution because we're not planning to have this kind of situation. Maybe one would then ask, what does this impact, how the impact does it have in the cultural space where practicing culture and rituals? Indeed, it has caused so much confusion. It has disrupted the processes. You have indicated and alluded to the fact that these things have forced us to change the way we do things. But that doesn't mean that we need to give up in what we're doing. From the cultural point of view, when these things, they come up and they were not planned for, I would want to put a perspective that in our belief, in the way we do things, I want to put this in the context of isiXhosa because I don't want to lose the content that I want to convey to the people. We are saying in Xhosa, isiko lisemlonyeni, isiko liyathethelwa. When you do that, you converge when there's a problem and then say, you have never experienced this thing. Now there's a challenge confronting us. And then the pandemic, it's against us, it's ravaging the society. Therefore, we would not want to be part of this process that will assist the problem that we want to avoid. Then, it simply means that ikhaya liyahlala, izizwe ne-communities zihlala phansi zithethe. Then when you do that, you say, this thing that has come here, we have to find a way of addressing the challenge at hand. Let me be specific to the issue of the funerals. Now that there are lockdown rules that would say you have to be less than 50 and other members should not come to the family. Recently, in the Eastern Cape, one of the kingdoms of Amampondomise, because we were alluding to the challenges of this pandemic, we took a decision to say, can we then devise means? And we have used the word called ukuqhusheka. Ukuqhusheka, it simply means that you'd need to put something and put it safe, uyifihle. You'll do that in a manner that you are not supposed to do it, but because of the circumstances, you'd have to do that. But then let's say it comes that we are dealing with this matter and you have addressed the matter. It is also allowed, because before we do that, we will talk spiritually to the person that we are burying and tell him or tell her that we are faced with this challenge. This is the reason that we are doing 1, 2, 3, because we believe that he is listening, he is seeing the situation. Now he or she must assist us in going through this process. After all these challenges, we will then say, because we did not do a procedure and all what was supposed to have been happening, now we will do this and we will do the rituals after that. Then we'll call the family and we'll have to follow the process as we should have done it had it not this pandemic took place. So in the cultural space, it cannot be a challenge that much because we have this belief to say, isiko liyathethelwa, isiko lisemlonyeni.
Okay. Yeah, I think let's just hold it there. Let's have other people just giving their opening remarks. Let's have Rabbi Shaket giving his view around how have the regulations been impacted how they do things within the Jewish faith.
Why me?
No, because I can see you all from this side. Because I just want us to have order and just have about 2 to 3 minutes max so that everybody gets a chance to give their opening remarks.
No, I'm joking. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just want to start with a statement about death in Judaism, because I think it's important to kind of put it through. And just to say that Judaism is a faith which sanctifies life in a very strong manner. So maybe you know the symbol Chai. Chai, it's Chet and Yud, it's like a life. So it's Am Yisrael Chai, David Melech Israel Chai, David King of Israel is alive. It's a lot about a life. God is a living God, Elohim Chaim, and the Torah is Torat Chaim, the Torah of life. So that idea of life is very strong, and thus what causes impurity is death and the applications of death, blood and so on. This is why blood is not kosher and so on. So this is like a basic kind of a entry point from the Jewish point of view. There is avoiding people to be in a condition of impurity because being exposed or because they cannot take care of it properly. So I want to kind of put it clearly. And then there are two aspects: what we owe the deceased and what we owe the family. Okay? So when it comes to the deceased, there is like an idea of the dignity of the death, kvod hamet, the dignity of the death, and it's called also gmilut chesed shel emet, a true act of righteousness, of loving kindness. Like, let's say, it's important to honor your parents, it's important to give charity, it's important many things, but burying the dead is really like shel emet, it's a truly act of righteousness. And I think in this regard, we have a burial society called the Cllr Kadisha, Chev in Joburg, very strong organization. The Cllr Kadisha, and it's not only burial society, they have old age home, and they are strong community welfare thing. So let me just summarize how it goes from our perspective. First, Jewish funerals are very simple. They're not, I mean, we invite people to come, but obviously we will keep now the 50 people restriction. And I wanted to say the following, because most of our burials happen in West Park. I'll talk in a while after that. Now, we were talking about what will happen when West Park will be done. So there is another land and there is this plan. I'm not worried about this. I want to say that when people come, first the volunteers go and fetch them for the hospitals. The volunteers of the burial society go and fetch them from the hospitals. Then if it's a COVID person, you cannot do the washing. There's a tahara. There's a washing system. You cannot do it. The person gets from the mortuary in 2 nylon bags, the death bags, nylon bags, and you cannot touch it. So what they would do now, they would put the shreds on top of the nylon, the body bag, on top of the body bag, and that's it. Now they ask what we're going to do, So we said, tomorrow morning, Mashiach comes. There is the resurrection of the dead. Tomorrow morning, it's going to happen. The Messiah will sort them out and send them to have the bath, the cleansing that they need to do before they can be resurrected. And about the family, so that's when it comes to the deceased. When it comes to the family, there is the 7 days period of bereavement, and then there is the 30 days. So, and part of it is for people to come visit. It's a communal thing. You come to, be with the person. Well, that's not happening now. And the rabbi can call and friends can call, but it's a problem. And we can do, we can do the memorials online. What we can do is to kind of assist, to make sure that our care committee takes care of it, to make sure I mention the names properly on our meeting. Our prayer meetings are on Zoom, some are not. And that's what I wanted to kind of open with. Just last thing, in Judaism, cremations is a dispute. There's a big disagreement about cremations. Now, Orthodox Jews will not go toward cremation. Our people will do. Our people meaning the progressive Jews and the Hebraic communities, African Hebraic communities, which are not necessarily Orthodox Jews, but there's a lot of people who wants to be close to Judaism. If they would choose to be cremated, we will still hold all relevant rituals for them. At their absence, obviously, then let's be practical. The burial society of the cremation, in many cases, they will be the one who fetching them, and then we will assist the family with the rituals themselves. That was
all right. Let's go to Mr. Padache from the Hindu faith. Can you unmute, or let me unmute you here? Can you unmute yourself that side? Right.
Yes. Okay.
So from a Hindu perspective, how have these regulations affected your burial practice?
Can you give a brief explanation of Hinduism?
Yes.
Yes.
A brief explanation,
give a
but
summary.
more specifically, how have you been impacted by the new regulations, similar to what Rabbi said?
Okay. First of all, as a community of the Rainbow Nation, as a minority, we are fortunate to be given the opportunities to carry out our rituals and our tradition in this country. And we are law-abiding with discipline. And therefore, we follow the rules and the laws of the country strictly. We abided to this. We're not even having 50 people at some funerals. It's just 10. Understand that nobly referred to as a great journey. And when the lessons of this life have been learned and karma has reached to a point of intensity, the soul leaves the body. And we don't put emphasis on the body as such. It's more the soul. So we have this understanding that people die under different circumstances. they die at sea, they die at war, the tsunami, they die at earthquakes, car crashes where cars burn out to ashes, and various different ways that we cannot retrieve the body. And we have rituals that will suffice for for performing these rituals. So it is important to understand that it's not so much the body, but how we can safeguard the masses of the people in our community.
You're breaking up a little bit. Mr. Padache, you're breaking up a little bit.
To be born, but between birth and death, we need to live a life filled with satya, truth, dharma, righteousness, prema, love, shanti, ahimsa, non-violence. And we have to have these values to help us. So that's how we accepting this situation in our country at the moment, is to abide, and we have facility in the event of someone passing on with COVID. Didn't have a situation at the moment. I believe they're going to be wrapped up in 3 plastics and then put into the coffin, maybe from the mortuary straight to the crematorium. We don't do much burials, but everything is it's cremation. So everything will be done at the crematorium, and all rituals will be performed at the residence of the deceased.
Thank you very much. Can we also move to Dr. Prophet Lizwi Khadebe? Can you unmute yourself and just give us your opening remarks around how the regulations are impacting on the practices that you've heard of burying, your members?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity and the interaction. I think I have to start here. In the African religion, the belief and spirituality, the belief is that spirit does not die. Because spirit does not die, spirit lives in the physical world. And when a person dies, the spirit then moves on to the spiritual dimension. I think that's the foundation, and that's what is very important. Of course, I speak more from the African indigenous spiritual side. Remember that there is also the African traditional side. So in terms of African traditions differ from house to house, from family to family. So certain families will have their own traditions that they do. Now, I think what is important here is that we need to view the most important practices that are necessary and needed. Because when a person dies, in terms of the African religion, we are then preparing that spirit for the journey of the spiritual dimension. That's where the burial, that's where the funeral becomes important. And that's where certain rituals becomes important. They are important because they are preparing that spirit for the spiritual dimension. And so what I see is that in the African tradition, the families will have many, many traditions, but they need to identify what will be the most important. In the African spirituality, as I am, in terms of spirituality, what is the most important thing that we need to do in order to prepare this person? And I'll make a quick example. I conducted the funeral of the late Ubaba of Vusamazulu, Credo Mutua, and as a prophet, and he was also a prophet. And I can say that there were some challenges because of the new regulations. But we did come to an understanding that I will conduct what is important as a prophet, sending away a prophet, and that I was allowed to conduct in the family. So I think my input is that there are certain things that they can't be compromised, that they should be done in order for that spirit to go well into the spiritual dimension.
Can you be maybe just one or two things that were specific that you had challenges with in your standard practices of preparing that?
I think in the beginning we wore our mask and did everything that was conducted. But let me talk about now in terms of the prophetic wood, where I'll need to use do the ceremony of water in order to do the water around him in order to prepare him. So that was a bit of a challenge, since we are not allowed to go close to the coffin, as much as he did not die of COVID. So those were the kind of challenges, but they were of course corrected because he did not die of COVID. We were wearing the masks, we were all protected. So we still had to negotiate. I think since these regulations are new, so place to place, some are not familiar, they'll just tell you don't go near. So those were the kind of challenges that we had, but they were all corrected with the understanding of authorities who were there.
Thank you very much. Bishop Tebe, can you unmute yourself and just give us your opening remarks around how have you been affected by the regulations?
No, thanks very much, Doc, and thanks very much to speaker and everyone else in the panel. You know what is very important here is to say that from the FBO perspective of this, we have looked at it, we have discussed it in a very lengthy way. We are aware that it's something that we never saw coming, and it's something that we never expected to come, actually. We could see it abroad. We never expected that it would land in South Africa, you know. But the FBO approach would be to saying that an engagement of this nature, we want to use it more effectively to begin to prepare various leaders of various religions and various traditions, you know, so that when a time comes when the unexpected drops in again in terms of what will be done, we should begin to say that we have spoken about it and we have seen it. And fortunately enough, the methods of barriers in this situation have begun to educate our people. It's a work in progress, so it now becomes an education in progress. So people are beginning to learn. And let me tell you one thing that we should not also overlook as leaders. It has also begun to show us that it is more cheaper and it is more effective in terms of financial savings. It's one point that we need not to neglect in this process. And also to begin to say that it gives the family of the deceased an opportunity of a recovery financially also. But the bad part of it, you know, if we may say it, is that the disturbance in terms of the protocols of the normal standard burial procedures, you know, in terms of, for example, you would have people that will go to their grave that will leave, that will be left behind the grave, you know, after the burial is completed. They will stay behind the grave and finalize their small rituals in terms of their clans. You know, it does not happen like that. Immediately after the TLB has finished loading up, everyone has to go. It's a standard requirement. It inconveniences people. But looking at the broader picture here will begin to say that the team that is now assembled here, will we be able to begin to disseminate a positive information to our constituencies and begin to say that, look, it's coming to South Africa. If we can manage to stop it, can we be able to handle it in the right way? But like many speakers have already alluded to the fact, there were some glitches in terms of procedures, protocols. Remember, traditionally, we would visit the family from day one of the death up until, you know, the last day of the burial. It cannot be possible anymore now. So FBO side is the one that says that we want to encourage the leaders that are participating on the platform to begin also to send a message out there and begin to look at it for the future and dip into the future. I'm aware Prophet Khadebe is quite very influential on that. The challenge that comes to traditionals is what he was saying. You know, you would have a certain Tembu clan and you had certain prophets. Now, these people together, we need to cover them up and say that in these regulations, how do we begin to understand and come to a common ground? And I think, to me, it's an education in progress. You know, we are learning meanwhile we are working. So let us keep it in that way, and we can go further than that. And thanks very much.
Can we have the representative from the Muslim faith? I can see just that the name is not appearing. From Soweto, from Dobbs, is it? Yeah, the one from Soweto. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for welcoming me, Dokotela, and all praises are due to the Almighty, and may the peace and the blessings of the Almighty be upon all of us. Thank you very much for the program, Madam Speaker. Such a very progressive and a very constructive program that as a community, yes, we do need such programs to see the farewell of our beloved ones and the near ones. Yes, from an Islamic point of view, as I'm serving as, in actual fact, as a burial officer in the Muslim community in the indigenous area of Soweto, broadly. Islam is, of course, a universal religion whereby all the principles are abiding, whether you are an African, whether you are an Indian, whether you're from Asia, but all the principles are all one and the same. One is when a person has left us, one is that he's got a right over us to be washed. And the washing is not that kind of a washing whereby perhaps people uses like hose pipes or just wiping there and there. It's so precise to an extent that in Zulu they'll say, "Umuntu uyashitaba," you know, wiping from the bottomness of your private parts. So this is when a person is going to meet his creator, he must be cleansed to that extent that not even a smallest impurity, you know, it's led to live with this kind of a person. So he needs to be washed. So when we're washing our own, like we wash him like a small baby. We wash this person like a small baby in a very, very kind of a dignified way. So in that, this is how we do the farewell. So now with regards to the pandemic, now that has, of course, visited our nation at large, it becomes very difficult if it's found that perhaps the case is a COVID-related kind of a case whereby we cannot come closer, or perhaps you need those kind of PPE, PPT, those kind of protective kind of clothing that you need to wear in order to prevent the infection and the like. So in that, the brothers, at least of about say 4 or 5 of the members of the family, including of course the members like myself, who is running the burial committee. You know what? Some of the members of the family, it's not a norm for a person to go wash anybody in any time. So they need guidelines and that. So we need to be there and guide them. Number one. Number two, as we finish washing the body, there is a kind of a cloth. We call it a coffin that we enshroud the late. We need to enshroud him with it, and together with that, after enshrouding it, in the process of going to the grave side, we need to hold the deceased with our own hands and lay him into rest in his grave, you know, with dignity and honor. So in that regard now, those kind of regulations or perhaps norms or principles that we follow as a Muslim community now are compromised in that regard. Yes, we do understand and accept that this is not because of, but it is, of course, for the safety of our own and the safety of our own and the public at large. Yes, and together with it, now there comes a number of what you call the restriction of the attendees of the funeral, or as the Muslim what you call religion. A deceased has a specific right that the congregants needs to come together and offer what we call a janaza salah. This kind of a prayer is there, you know, to ask for the deceased, for the Almighty to forgive him his shortcomings in the surface of this world, and together with that, we also asking for ourselves to be, you know, forgiven for our shortcomings, and together that Almighty must welcome him in heaven, you know. So we need a maximum participants of the congregants to offer this kind of a prayer. Now, with regards to the restriction, you find that maybe the members of the family are non-Muslims, most of them. You find that the brother was the only Muslim or the sister was the only Muslim in his family. Now he needs the support of the entire congregation that will come there. You find that at times the members of the family, they outnumber, you know, as per the invitation, because now we go with the invitation, and that you find that the numbers of the members of the family, they outnumber the brothers who must come and give the burial prayer right to the deceased. Now that also is compromised because of the numbers and the figures and all that. So it has already, yes, affected a kind of a lot of principles and the way of doings as per the teachings of Islam and the principles of Islam. Yes, I would like to stop there for now. Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you. All right. Jacqueline, okay, let me see now. Manene, I think it's Manene. Can you?
Manene has already spoken.
Okay, already spoken. Joy?
Yes, according to Joy, yes.
Joy, Mataza, standing for Mataza. Yeah, please, quickly, because we're running out of time. We need to still introduce other issues that need to be discussed.
Thank you, Doc. What we have done at our training institute was to first teach our initiates, inform and educate them about this pandemic. We've also been of the view that we've had plagues and pandemics throughout humanity. And we've had to change our rituals and how we bury our loved ones, you know, to suit the subjective conditions. So fortunately, the traditional healers, when a traditional healer passes on, it's not a norm for traditional healers to attend the funeral. Our rituals are usually done before the burial and post the burial. However, it also depends on whether one has asked before they pass on to be buried the ancestral way or the traditional way or the Christian way. So what we have done is to also inform. We've performed rituals to inform ancestors of the current situations. Because remember, most ancestors, there have never been pandemics during their time. So what we did in our institute was to perform rituals to inform the ancestors of the current situation and also make them understand why certain ancestral ceremonies and rituals cannot be performed during this pandemic. So that's what we've done. However, it does pose a challenge because there are other rituals that we can't do away with. We just cannot do away with. However, we are still in discussions as to how do we, go about observing the current lockdown and also the COVID-19 regulations without necessarily offending our ancestors and without necessarily turning our backs on our calling and who we are as traditional healers and sangomas.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to talk? There's Dada's phone. It's somebody who joined us late. Can we have?
Maybe Dr. Fundi, let me just introduce Dada. Dada is the regional secretary of the African National Congress, so he has joined here, so I think he can further introduce himself. You are most welcome.
All right, can he unmute himself? Thank you. We're waiting for Mr. Dada, but he's not unmuting himself.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, please, can you go ahead? We're basically trying to find out how has the new regulations relating to funerals and burials affected your community?
Okay, thank you very much for the term. I hope I'm audible. 2 weeks at least to have been involved in burying at least 3 of our colleagues or our comrades or our members. The regulations have actually brought a new normal or a culture shock within our community, wherein you have to at least ensure that people who attend the funeral are at least 50 and not more than 50. You need to ensure social distancing. And in some cases, you'd know that funerals would not go to a wall or to a church. They'll actually, the funeral service will happen at in the yard, which poses a difficulty in as far as trying to maintain that social distance if it is to happen in the yard of the deceased. And those are some of the challenges that we face, and an outcry generally from our people that if it's 50, you're really looking at the family alone. You'd like you to extend it to other people who are on the outside. So there have been serious challenges that the regulations have, our people have faced. But at the same time, the regulations have also assisted in bringing a new culture and a new normal on how we conduct our funerals. At least for the last few weeks, I haven't seen some of the annoying activities that we see after funerals, some of them that are un-African, some of the activities that are really annoying, where you'll have people spinning cars, doing all sorts of funny things. So I think to a large extent, somehow, it has brought about some form of discipline and normality. So I'll end it at there.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I was going to say, Speaker, so that we are able to move faster, the 2 issues around mass burials and also cremations. If we get to a point where that becomes, a necessity, if we could just get people, to just quickly then say in their own faiths or religions, if something like that had to happen where there are mass burials or the issue of cremations, how would they respond? But we've already heard from Rabbi that I think it's Rabbi who said there's no, was it no cremations? I can't remember now.
Yes, it's Rabbi in the Jewish faith.
Yes. So can we quickly maybe, in the unlikely event that there are mass, what do you call it, mass funerals or mass burials or cremations, how would that interfere with how things are done within the various faiths?
Maybe in addition to your question, Doc, the second response or input the leaders should give is that how would they then assist in the mindset change? Because I have heard all the leaders that have spoken here are talking about the new norm and the need to change the mindset and adapt to the new norm. Only Sis Joy has spoken about the education that they are doing to their people. So if the leaders could also just give us an information to say, how do you then, in whatever the response they will give to your question, how are they intending to change the mindset of their own congregants, their own people, to adapt to the new normal? Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just thought maybe also to acknowledge a few people that are watching watching on various Facebook
comments.
Just the comments. Just quickly, I'll run through them. We've got a lot of people that are watching at the moment, and they're appreciating this particular broadcast. People like Lungile Dukwana says, "Well done, Madam Speaker." And Lulama Loza says, "Yes, I am listening." Motswane Ishmael Malale says, wow, this is good. Maggie Govinden says, Vanakum, we are listening. And Pumelele Shazo says, we are within. And this is where the comments come in. Me Tandim Lalose says, true, we need to prepare ourselves for grave sharing, especially the family. However, it is still very new and very difficult practice. Education in progress. I agree, Chair. Lula Maloza says traditional leaders, spiritual leaders of paramount importance in this discussion, their role in educating rural communities all over the country. And then the last one, Nongaba Musunkutu says, Madam Speaker, I am watching my leader, interesting topic. She goes on further to say, one thing that has affected me when I buried my eldest brother on the 30th of April was the issue of the number 50 regarding mourners, inclusive of funeral parlor people, the reverend, depending on how many people he brings. This means most close family members were not included. We had to comply. So those are the comments for now. I think I'll do another one later on.
Thank you. Thank you, Sipho. Can we have an indication from leaders on the input on the questions that we have posed? Please unmute yourself.
All right. I think let's just follow the same route that we did last time, you know. So let's just have the rabbi quickly, and then we move to Mr. Padache, and then we make that, you know, so that, you know, we are able to get, you know, everyone, you know, giving their input.
So,
Mr. Rabbi, please take a stage.
Yeah. I'd like to open with saying that apartheid heritage is that people are not buried together, and you'll be buried according to your denomination. Even in the Jewish section, there are separate parts for progressive Jews and Orthodox Jews. There's like you know, it's an apartheid heritage. So God forbid, we're all hoping we won't get to mass burials. But this is like one thing that we'll have to think. People say, what? Can I be buried with the Chinese? Can I be buried with the this? Can I? No, yeah, human beings are human beings, and you know, you'll get sorted when you get up. This is the one thing. I want to say, as Ms. Joy said, it's not the first time that there are these kind of situations. We had been in situation of mass burials, and Jews mainly in World War II and the Holocaust. So there is a knowledge of that. It's terrible, and we're hoping never to get there. Regarding cremation, look, it's a tough thing. It's also got to do with the memory of the Holocaust, because when Jews were kind of burned, so it triggers a lot with the people. In that sense, I'm not representative. My Orthodox brethren as rabbis will be extremely disturbed by if there comes such need, and they will ask that all other options will be seized prior to that. Let me stop there, but I'm just saying, we'll look at it in the eye, and we'll mediate to our people what needs to be mediated. These are not normal days.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabbi. Mr. Manene, can you please have a take? Mr. Manene, your take, please. Okay, Mr. Manene, I guess. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks very much. Let me have a bite on the issue of mass burials or mass funerals. Look, because we are faced with the situation and we are compelled to comply because we want to save the situation. Now, generally, what would happen? I don't think there will be resistance in terms of the mass burials and the mass funerals, because that's the situation that we are faced with. But I foresee a situation that after this thing, after the Holocaust, if I may put it in that way, expect people that will make application to the municipalities for the exhumation of their bodies, of the loved ones, that they would want to have them and buried in their own way that will satisfy them. So I think in those mass funerals or burials, it will be indicated that in this place, there's so and so who has been laid here, so that when that time comes, it becomes easy for any family who want to do otherwise. in terms of their loved ones. Then in the issue of cremation, it's just a new culture that is cropping in terms of in our communities, which I think in the majority wouldn't love to go that way, because we still have this belief that when we are faced with challenges as the society, as the individuals and the families and the traditional communities in terms of the clans, would want to go there and talk to our the past ones, which is we believe there's a connection spiritually with those people that are there. So the issue of cremation is a difficult one. There are few people that have chosen that route, but the majority are still sticking to the OJ. We need to have this person buried here. There's a point, Khenebe, that you have raised that you didn't touch now. The issue of said there was a concern even before the lockdown, before the COVID-19. The issue that says now that in the urban settlement, we're faced with the ever decreasing space of burying people. Yes. To me, that debate, we need to take it further. I'm not convinced, because we need to strike a balance. If you talk about the ever decreasing space of the funerals, but at the same time, you don't address the issue of space that is always made available of business. So those who are interested in business, I felt much comfortable. When you talk about that we want to preserve our culture, we want because they give blessings to us, those that are there in those burials. And you'll also focus on one side. Let's have a balance. If you say there is no space for burials, what about the space that is ever available for business? I'm not saying the issue of business is wrong, but that's the point that I wanted to raise, so that when you live here, someday we need to have a debate around this thing, because for us people who are cultural practitioners, it's not going down very well, with the indication that the question will always be raised to that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tata. You did not talk about the mindset change and how, for example, you spoke about Ukushega earlier. So have you got acceptance of Ukushega from the communities?
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. That's the point that I've just forgotten. As you have indicated, that we still have a role as traditional leaders, whether in the urban settlement or in the rural areas, to talk to our people. But what I think it's good about this thing, we have got technology that will address these challenges. But as traditional leaders, be mindful of the lockdown rules, that you need not to be more than that. The word it's going out, the issue of Ukushega, for an example, it's something that people have alluded to, because we are saying we are saving the situation. It may not be accepted in other areas, but the point is we have made it clear that when you say Ukushega, we are saving the situation. I wanted to put a word that will be well understood by other colleagues that are in the platform. But I don't want to say Ukushega is to hide, because it has got a different meaning. It takes the content of Ukushega. Yeah. So the point is, the word is going out there that they were faced with this situation. So let's go and tell our people that let's devise means, even besides Ukushega only, any means that will save and give dignity to what we are doing in our own little corners, so that at the end, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Nyati, how much time do we have? I see 17 minutes.
Yeah, we have up until 5:30. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have 20 minutes to go.
Thank you, Mr. Padiachi, or who's on the platform?
Yes, Madam Speaker, can I come in quickly?
Yes, Brother Parakatula.
Yes,
okay,
yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Yes, I'm seeing my time for praying now. It's coming very close and leaving me.
Okay.
Yes, according to the Islamic point of view, in that it's a very, very delicate and a very, very serious situation, whereby if and only if, God forbid, if and only if it comes to a push, and then the whole what you call the Muslim, what you call the theologians and the scholars need to sit together and come up with a conclusion in that regard, as for the mass burial or the cremation and that. But from the Islamic point of view, the Almighty says, from God you come from, and to God you will return. And at the very same time, from dust you were created, and to dust you will return. One is sinokuthi kunosiko bese kuba nomkhuba. You see, the norm, it's what everybody can come up with and implement, and nobody says nothing about it. But a tradition is that kind of a tradition whereby God Almighty says that we need to follow. So when God Almighty says that we have been created from dust, and to dust we will return. So then it will be very problematic and confusing and depressing, and I don't know what's going to happen to the entire Muslim community, whereby if it comes to shove, that we need to be mass burial and all that, because on our burial, on the cemetery, we've got a separate kind of burial site that we bury our Muslims in faith. And then there's a Christian kind of burial site. And on the other side, there are those who are cremating. And then on our side, perhaps we might have that kind of space, like how the previous speaker has said, that at least we need to accommodate those people who've got those kind of beliefs, because it is very sensitive to give a farewell to the loved one according to the beliefs and the principles that he will be raised in the day of judgment for that, inshallah. So in that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Barakatula.
Hello?
Dr. Prophet. Hello? Dr. Prophet Khatebe. Your take, please, Tata Uzwilezwe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam. Let me quickly also just emphasize the first part that we spoke about very quickly, to say, as I said, that they are important traditions or spiritual rituals that needs to be performed. So I think that must be looked at, to say those not the less important. I don't want to say the useless, but the less important maybe can be done away, and the important must be done with proper protective gears and because they need to be done. Going to this part we are speaking about now, we must also remember that the spirit as well will always also be connected to where it was laid, the body was laid. And I think it goes with the whole belief and ideas. And that is why there are issues about a person is buried. There are issues about visiting the grave. It's because of the connection of that spirit. Also the closure people feel when you go to visit your loved one. They are not physical, but you get that closure. One example is that sometimes you are young and your grandfather died, grandmother died, somebody of your family, and we know Tina Masiema Kaya, go to the homeland. The first thing we do is sleep today, and early in the morning we are going to visit the graveyards of our ancestors. And sometimes you might not even know your ancestor physically, but spiritually, the connection you make, you find closure with that person as if they were alive. So all of that must be taken into effect. Also remembering, I know this has been on the table for a very long time, about cremation, about space, and about mass burials. It's not only COVID-19, it has been there on the table. And it is very delicate and quite really complicated when it comes to issues of beliefs, as I said, because I need to still go and visit that grave to find closure with the person that has passed away. So in whatever decisions and discussions we are doing, I think that must be coming in our mind, is that can we do a mass burial, but can we still identify our loved ones? Can we do a mass burial and never identify them? That is very problematic.
Thank you very much, Dada Uzwilezwe. Can we hear from Mr. Parachi from Hindu Faith? Your take, please, sir. Mr. Parachi, please unmute yourself. Yes, thank you.
I say, as I mentioned earlier, as the soul leaves the physical body, which returns to the elements, to the earth, the awareness, the will, the memory, and the intelligence which we think of ourselves continue to exist in the soul. So it's not so much the body, but the soul. It is good to understand that to maintain calm, to maintain the awareness of the spread of the virus and how best we can prevent this in our congregations, whether it's a church or a funeral. It is important to also know that we limited the families because of the spread of the virus.
Okay.
We've lost him.
Hello. Okay. Mr. Parachi. Okay, he will come back when he's back. Mr. Tatutebe. Can we go to Tatutebe in the meantime whilst Mr. Parachi is still connecting?
Yes, in terms of the cremation versus the mass burial, we must say that at FBO we are very thankful and we are very clear in terms of that. The majority of people that we have spoken to or engaged in terms of that, they are more in favor of the mass burial, simply because of that they believe in resurrection. In resurrection, they believe that they still have to make contact with their Almighty. So in terms of the cremation, a majority of them have shown some signs of a little bit of uncertainty, whereby they don't believe in the process of the cremation. But let me tell you, Speaker, a majority of these Christian people are quite very happy. They even quoted from the scriptures from the book of Kings, First Kings, about from the verse of 30 to 31 in terms of the bodies, and also the book of John, chapter 11, verse 25 to 26. Those are the scriptures that embodies Christianity, and it also gave them, there's quite a number of scriptures in the Bible that talks about the burial and how they will then looking at that. So in very short process, how are we looking at FBO to begin to move forward with this? We have now identified in terms of the surveys that we are going to run, and we are also engaging timeously. We've already had funerals, whereby we are running a survey at the same time we are participating in funerals. So indeed, we are working towards that. And I can tell you, Speaker, one is very happy about the response that we are getting on the ground. Yes, in terms of technical challenges with the other traditions and beliefs, we are still aware that they are coming, but I'm very happy in terms of the response that we are giving to them. So, majority of people are in favor of the mass burials.
Okay, thank you very much, Tatutebe. Mr. Parachi, have you reconnected? If not, can we go through to Sis Joy? Sis Joy?
Yes, Speaker, thank you so much. Speaker, we believe in spirits, not necessarily the corpse. That is why at funerals, at the end of the funeral, sithi uthuthu elithuthwini umhlaba emhlabeni, because we believe it is the spirit that never dies. And for us, that is why when we talk to our ancestors, we don't always go to the grave. We usually go to mountains, we usually go to the rivers, you know, because we believe that is where those spirits reside. And therefore, in our institute, this is a discussion that we had not so long ago. It also, it has varied from one Sangoma to the other. Some are for cremation, some are against cremation, but one that we agree on is that we believe in spirits. And also what is important for us is knowing where our loved ones have been buried. For example, we do have instances where we've got to go, for example, to appease an ancestor that passed on centuries and centuries ago, and none of the living family members would know where their grave is. What we usually do in those instances, we would go to that area where we think that grave site is. It's not the actual grave, but it is the area to sort of perform whatever ritual that we need to perform at that time. We therefore, what's important for us is knowing where our loved ones are, because we believe in spirits, not the corpse.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sis Joy. Mr. Pariachi, have you reconnected? Not yet. Can I give this opportunity to Sipho, because we are not alone on this platform. We are also with our viewers, and there are questions that are coming through from our viewers on the topic, so that we are able to respond to the questions before we are out for time. Sipho?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. There is a lot of comments. There are a lot of people that have shown interest in the show, and Many of them might not be able to read their comments because they're just thanking you and your office for organizing this one. Elias Nzinini says, true on that note, some Black people perform rituals when one of them has passed on. I think we need to find a way to accommodate those people who wants to perform some of their rituals as soon as they have passed on. He goes on to say, can we get clarity on the rumors of when one has passed on with coronavirus that the family will not be part of the burial? So that's the one comment. Zotolo Libazi says, I'm watching and I'm so happy to see Utatulizwe involved. Puti says, we need our indigenous leaders to up and run just like the Western medical sector. They are of utmost importance to us. We need them to intercede on our spiritual journey. We need their guidance. Zoleka Ntozini says, afternoon, my spiritual leaders. My father, Ubaba Welizwi, also thank you to the host for inviting spiritual people. It says to inviting spiritual people because they know better. Puti Sibanda says, thank you so much for involving Utata because he is always sidelined together with other indigenous leaders. Nyameka says, watching, supporting our guide, our spiritual father, Utata Welizwe. And the last ones, Hazel Nkosi. Nkosi said, same in Christianity, and I'm thinking she was responding to one of the comments made. And then Uputi says, Tina, as Africans, we need to know where our loved ones are. And then Melusi says, I don't support mass burial. So, Madam Speaker, let me end there because I think I'll take another 5 minutes of comment. So let me stop there, but also to say thank you to everybody who's engaging us on all the social media platforms. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, a quick, nobody's supporting mass burials. We all hope we are not going to get there, and we're looking at it just because we're looking at it. Nobody would like to see mass burials, okay? Even those who think that might be an option, nobody would like to see it. Nobody supports it.
To see it, yes. Yes, thank you very much. We are left with 7 minutes, am I right? 7 minutes, and thank you to our viewers for your comments and for your questions. Some of the questions might not be answered today, but we will do follow-ups and respond to the questions. We will still be in interaction with the leaders that are on the panel today. Any takes, Dr. Nyati? Dr. Nyati, I see your hand.
Okay. Speaker, I just wanted to also find out, I know it's not part of the questions that we had formulated before, but are there any aspects of the current regulations that people think maybe even post-COVID would actually, you know, be useful to adopt? Remember, this is a consultation thing. And I mean, there's been people who are talking about the fact that there used to be extravagant funerals. And with the new regulations, now people are seeing that it's possible to bury without having to spend the monies that people were spending. So I'm just asking if there are any aspects of the current regulations that people think are worthy to be considered post-COVID.
Any take on that question or on that comment? Rabbi, do you want to have a bite on this?
He must unmute himself.
I spoke enough. I spoke enough.
You spoken enough. Okay. Sis Joy? Sis Joy, that's a challenging question of the beyond COVID.
I think for me, Speaker, currently right now, we all puzzled. We also don't understand what we're dealing with. And currently, there is nothing regarding the current regulations that I would want to carry over post COVID-19 or post lockdown, because it's quite limiting. Yes, I understand the financial saving aspect of it, but still, even with that, extravagant funerals are a choice. I think we shouldn't dictate to people how they should bury. If people want to go all out, if people want luxurious funerals, that is their choice. However, at the same time, we also should give people the options, as long as whatever options that are available to them, for me, are environmentally safe and are culturally sensitive, then I am fine with it. But there's nothing currently that I would want carried over post-COVID-19, not at all.
Okay.
Bishop Tebe wanted to say something.
Yes, yes, Doc. To your question, Doc, I just want to be very precise. To be honest, there are positives out of that situation. And one is Ubuntu, that was missing for quite a very long time. We have seen now how dignified it has become to bury a person with the right mourning procedures. Although the part that is still disturbing is that. So there are positives to take out of that. Even other than your financial aspect that we raised earlier on, the positive part is that we can now bury in dignity. We are now regaining the composure of Ubuntu, whereby an elderly person, we can see that person buried in a dignity. So I think post-COVID-19, we can still see that going on. Instead of these after tears, after parties, after burials, after and after, which are very, very toxic in terms of the society ruling. You would see also the inconvenience that was caused by mass funerals going to the graveyard, even the problem at the gates of the grave cemeteries. We have seen that it's been corrected and been run in a very simple flow manner. So I think once the study has shown that, look, we can improve that, let us move for that. One is in favor of saying that we can improve on that. Just on one part before I leave that one, Doc, is that on this issue of people going to the graveyard and all that, perhaps what we should then suggest, we should suggest a proper identification in the mass graves. You see, so that we know that if Bishop Tebe is laying here, that grave should be properly marked so that those who want to visit the grave may be able to do so. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. Nopala, are you still there? Do you want to have a bite?
Which one? This one here or the other side? Yeah.
Sipo, please mute. Please mute, Sipo, because we hear you. Okay, any other take, Nopala? Mr.
Yeah, no,
Paresh?
it's fine.
Okay.
I can hear you quite clearly. I
Yes.
think that there are positives, and that's new practices that we can take into the future in relation to the expenses that are also associated with funerals. But at the same time, I agree with the last speaker who said you can't impose how people would like to bury their loved ones. But I think I agree with the speaker who also says to a large extent it has restored the level of dignity and respect in our funerals, especially in Black communities or African communities. So I think there are positives, and our tasks really is to begin to discuss and debate and say how best do we ensure that post-COVID, this is how we should conduct our funerals. Because I can tell you now, we have not entered a space where we've been dictating as to what should happen. Even in the churches, they give a particular direction, but once people are out of service, it becomes something else. So I think we have an opportunity here that we can begin to engage. And one of the pressing matters, it's around cremation. How do you engage African communities in particular who do not really believe in cremation, and how to engage them? Because part of the problems we may have into the future is running short of space for graves. And what do we do? So I think that debate must also be opened, especially in the churches, so that we can debate it and discuss it, including traditional leaders who may also have a different view as it relates to cremation in African communities. So I think there's an opportunity there to enter into serious debates and find better solutions moving forward. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Nopala. Mine says 1 minute, Dr. Anyat.
Just let everyone just have their last bite, Speaker.
Okay. Can you start with Rabbi?
Yeah,
I know you said you've been speaking, but just your last bite, Rabbi.
No, it's okay. I just want to say we are not anywhere closer to post-COVID-19. COVID is going to be here for a while, until such time that majority of the population will be immune. So if you look on the Spanish flu, people were dying from the Spanish flu even in the 50s. It wasn't as strong as it was in 1919, 1920, but it will take a while until majority of the population will be immune. So it's not going anywhere. And all the scenario, we should look them in the eye and see where we are. So with that, I will end.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Speaker, can you have the gentleman from the Muslim faith, it's about his time to go and observe the fast, the breaking of the fast?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tella. Not yet the breaking of the fast.
I thought you were.
The fast will be taking place in another, say, 15 minutes or so. We're just close to that now. I just went to go pray one of the prayers that are said to be prayed. Nonetheless, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Once again, the experience that I need to share, or perhaps like moving forward, as we are in a situation whereby we're looking at curbing this kind of a disease, to limit it, not to spread as fast as the other countries, or to experience what the other countries are experiencing as well. We have tried our level best on limiting the alcohol abuse, where people, after consuming alcohol, they are so uncontrollable that we have tried our level best to at least limit that. So now, on the grave side, what I've experienced for the past 3 funerals that I've been conducting, the social distancing is not adhered to. And it's very, very important on the social distancing. So then I would like perhaps Dr. and the Madam Speaker, if they can take this as a kind of a precaution, that every funeral that in an area, it must be reported, of course, to the to the local police station. With that, when the funeral is about to leave or leaving to the cemetery, there must be a van or perhaps a law enforcement within the graveyard, because people are taking this thing very light. And even only if you see on the funerals, that's where people get to interact from different places, from different kind of backgrounds and all that. So that's when we are fearing the spread of this disease, if and only if it's not been taken care of with regards to the social distancing on the funerals. I would like to thank everyone who has participated in this kind of a program. May the Almighty, guide one and all and give us strength and help us, to be the means of curbing the spread of this kind of COVID. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Siyabonga, brother. Tatu Manene, your last word, please. Okay, Tatu Manene. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Knebe. I wanted to stress a point to say there are lessons that we'll take home after the COVID-19. I've just heard people recently, even in the rural areas, to say this thing, it will change the way we do things. For an example, it will lessen the cost in terms of the funerals. People have learned to know that even if you go to the funeral, the expenses will be lessened. Coupled with what I've heard in Botswana, that in Botswana, it's not allowed when you go to the funeral to have food. So if there are no food, it cuts cost. People will go there and do their thing. Some of us may view it as un-African or the lack of Ubuntu in that space. But again, I said, it has lent us, gives us a lesson to say Ubuntu will be retained. In some areas around the country, we had that kind of say, let's have a burial of an elder person to be afternoon. Now in the other villages now, people have started to appreciate that. Let's just have these early hours of burials so that people can be given space to do other things rather than to have a funeral that will take the whole day. I think really, we like it or not, there will be some changes. People will adjust. Thanks very much, and I appreciate people that we have been there. We have learned lessons from them. We have learned good suggestions, and I think we need to go back and continue with the education until we defeat this dinosaur. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dada. Dr. Prophet Khatib, your last bite, Dada.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mine is to say, let us observe the most important spiritual and traditional ways or preparations or ceremonies that must be done. If they should introduce protective gears, whatever that should be done for one to protect themselves, that should be done. Let us make sure that we observe that. In terms of the costs, especially to us as African people, who sometimes we have an attitude of showing off. I think what we can learn from this is the cutting of costs, but it should not be compulsory and it should not be in law, but it should be taken as an educative way, that from here, churches, spiritual places, traditionalists, and everyone should start educating using the COVID-19 example that costs were cut. So it should not be in law compulsory, but it should be a way of educating people so that we can cut costs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dada. Dada.
Yes, Speaker, I don't want to spoil the good words that people have spoken so far. The reality of the matter is that indeed the leaders on their platform are also positive, and I believe that they will take a positive message back to their homes. So everyone has said quite very good, and I'm very happy with the progress and the showing that the commitment that we are showing to the community of Johannesburg in particular. You know, what they're saying across South Africa, they say when Joburg sneezes, the whole country catches flu. So it is this platform that we need to make changes. And these changes come through people like yourself, about Doctor, about Prophet, about Rabbi and everyone else in the Muslim community and other religions. Traditional healers, all acknowledged. We want to say thank you very much as the FBO and say hashtag COVID-19 must fall. Thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you.
Thank you very much, Dada. Sis Joy, did you have a last bite? Okay.
Let's have Padayachi because we.
Hello.
Okay, it's Sis Joyce, and then after Sis Joyce goes about Mr. Padayachi.
All right. Thank you, Speaker. My last bite, Speaker, would be to say, I think in South Africa, our biggest issue really is compliance, because according to the World Health Organization to date, there's no evidence of persons having become infected from exposure to bodies of people who have died from COVID-19. For me, the problem is not the dead. The problem is the living. It is the living who don't comply. And I think for me, what's important is for the living to comply with the safety procedures that are in place, lest we are forced to carry out mass burials. And we don't want to get there. But I think it's important for us in our different spheres of contact to teach our people to comply, to ensure that our people comply with the safety procedures, because we really don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have no other choice but to opt for mass burials. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Mr. Padayachi, your last bite, please, sir. Have you reconnected, Mr. Padayachi?
Yeah, he's there. Mr. Padayachi is there.
Okay, I can't say his name. Mr. Padayachi?
I can see him.
Okay.
Mr. Padayachi? I can see him. Mr. Padayachi? Okay, you can choose somebody else. I'll send a message to him in the meantime.
I think somebody else is yourself, Doc. Or Tsipo, your last bite before Doc. Mr. Masiho. Okay. Mr. Maseko, please unmute.
Okay, sorry, Madam Speaker. I think from my side also just to thank and acknowledge all the spiritual leaders here today. Also that I have learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers have, and they have given us that good feedback to say it was an extremely informative session. So thank you for your input and thank you for serving our people. And thank you very much, Dr. Nyati and Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. We learn every day. And thank you to Regional Secretary, Tate Tada Morero as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Okay.
He's not at his sitting position now. I think we might have to wrap up without him.
Okay. Okay, please wrap up, Doc, before I close.
No, I think on my side, I'm quite happy with the fact that, you know, this was quite educational for me as well, but also people were able to focus on talking about something that is quite sensitive. Not many people want to talk about issues of death and burials, you know, but we were able to do so here, and we must continue to do this as we move to the communities where we belong, because we don't know what is going to happen, but we pray that we don't get to a point where mass burials or cremations are forced on communities. But if that does happen, at least the conversation must already have taken place in the communities. One key point, I think, around the mass burials is that people feel that if it does happen, people must be able to be identified so that should there be a need, you know, for exhumation later on, they are able to do so back to where they think they can give them the proper burials.
Thank you very much. From my side, leaders, for the input that you have made and the education that you have made, not only to ourselves, but to our viewers. What I take home is the acknowledgement that as a society and as a nation, we are dealing with invisible enemy, and we need to work together to fight this enemy. We are at a war with an enemy that we cannot fight back, but we need prayers, we need divine intervention for us to defeat this enemy. Also, the acknowledgement that we have to change our mindset and adjust to the new norm. The new norms without taking away our culture and our religious beliefs, but to adopt with the new way of doing things. As bad as it is, the COVID-19, there are things that we have learned as a society. There are learnings that we have taken from today of doing things differently, of going back to basics. So I would want to thank each and everyone for your contribution. Dr. Nyati, I so wish, because this topic is a sensitive topic, but it's a topic that is needed to talk about. If we had maybe more time, I just wished we had at least 2 hours, but I say that 2 hours was also not going to be sufficient for this topic. So we were talking about dealing with death and burial of our loved ones during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let us all go back to our spheres and make sure that we do the education to our people to avoid the spreading of this disease. And indeed, I agree with you, leaders, that if we obey the regulations and we work together in avoiding the spread and we do all the social distancing, then we can avoid mass burials, because no one wants to see us to get to that situation. We are told that we are still to reach a peak, but if we adhere to the regulations, I'm sure the peak won't be as bad as we think. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bontate Libomne. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Thank you, Siyabonga, Rialebuwa Ndolebuwa ngamanda.
Ngamanda, Zabuti.
Shalom, salam.
Shalom.
Salam, salam.
Bye.
Togoza.
Togoza, Togoza.